Watch before delete. My teen alien roommate tries human breeding for the first time. Evan Carter did not expect his life to change on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. He was 17 years old, sitting on his bed, scrolling through old videos on his tablet, when his phone buzzed with an official alert from the Earth Exchange Authority. He read the message twice because it did not feel real. You have been selected for shared housing under the Alien Exchange Program. Evan sighed and leaned back against the wall. He had signed up months ago, mostly as a joke. Thousands of humans had applied and only a few were chosen. Evan never thought his name would be on the list. He was not special. He was not a genius. He was just an average student who lived in a small city and helped his mother with chores. Now an alien roommate was coming to live with him. 2 days later, a government shuttle landed quietly in front of Evan's apartment building. There were no crowds, no cameras, and no noise. The program was still new, and the authorities wanted things to stay calm. Evan stood near the entrance, hands in his pockets, trying to look relaxed even though his heart was racing. The shuttle door opened slowly, and a tall figure stepped out. The alien did not look scary, but it was strange. Kurth stood a little taller than Evan, with smooth blue-gray skin and large dark eyes that reflected light like glass. His body was slim, and he wore a simple uniform with glowing symbols along the chest. A small floating device hovered beside him, blinking softly. Kurth looked around, tilting his head, clearly scanning the area. "So this is Earth," Kurth said in clear, careful English. "Atmosphere stable, gravity acceptable, noise levels lower than expected." Evan swallowed and stepped forward. Hi, I'm Evan." "I guess you're my roommate." Kurth turned toward him instantly. "Confirmed, you are Evan Carter, age 17 by Earth time, living space shared for observation and cooperation." Evan forced a smile. "Right, welcome, I guess." Kurth nodded seriously. "Acknowledged." The ride up to the apartment was quiet. Evan did not know what to say, and Kurth seemed busy reading data from his floating device. When they entered the apartment, Kurth stopped in the doorway and slowly looked around, studying everything from the sofa to the kitchen sink. "This environment is smaller than my assigned projections," Kurth said. "Yeah, well," Evan said awkwardly, "human homes aren't very big unless you're rich." Kurth nodded again. "Noted." They unpacked in silence. Kurth's belongings fit into one small case. There were no clothes, no personal items, only tools and sealed containers with warning labels Evan could not read. After a while, Evan noticed Kurth staring at a locked silver case placed carefully on the table. "What's in that?" Evan asked. Kurth turned slowly. "My primary research materials." "Research?" Evan asked. "About what?" Kurth hesitated, then opened the case just enough for Evan to see a glowing symbol on the inside lid. The translation device hummed softly. "Human breeding analysis," Kurth said. Evan froze. "Human what?" "Breeding," Kurth repeated, his tone calm and scientific. "The process by which humans sustain their population and food sources." Evan's face went red. "Okay, stop. That word means different things here." Kurth blinked. "Clarify." Evan waved his hands quickly. "You can't just say that without explaining. People will think something very wrong." Kurth tilted his head. Confusion detected. "In galactic science, breeding refers to biological continuation, agricultural growth, and genetic survival methods." Evan slowly relaxed. "Oh. You mean like farming and population studies?" "Correct," Kurth said. "Humans rely heavily on uncontrolled natural biological systems. This is unusual." Evan laughed nervously. "Uncontrolled, that's kind of rude." "It is an accurate description," Kurth replied. "Most advanced species abandoned natural systems long ago. They use cloning, synthesis, or artificial growth chambers. Humans did not." Evan crossed his arms. "We didn't have a choice." Kurth paused. "Exactly." Later that night, Evan lay awake on his bed, listening to the quiet hum of Kurth's equipment from the other room. His mind was full of questions. Why was the galaxy so interested in humans now? Why study something as basic as farming and families? The next morning, Evan woke up to strange noises coming from the kitchen. He rushed out and stopped in shock. Kurth was standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by containers of soil, seeds, and water samples. A small hologram floated above the table, showing diagrams of plants and growth cycles. "What are you doing?" Evan asked. "Beginning preliminary trials," Kurth said calmly. "Human food breeding is the foundation of your survival model." Evan rubbed his face. "You can't just start experiments in our kitchen." "Why not?" Kurth asked. "This is where food preparation occurs." "That's not the same thing," Evan replied. Kurth paused again, clearly processing the information. "Your species separates production from consumption." "Inefficient but culturally significant," Evan sighed. "Look, you can study stuff, but we need rules." "Rules are acceptable," Kurth said. "Define them." As the day went on, Evan showed Kurth how humans actually lived. He explained grocery stores, farms, and why people did not grow everything themselves. Kurth listened closely, recording everything, asking questions that no human scientist ever thought to ask. "Why do humans continue practices that fail often?" Kurth asked. Evan thought for a moment. "Because sometimes they work and because giving up means not trying again." Kurth stared at him. "That concept is statistically unsound." "Yeah," Evan said with a small smile, "but it's human." That night, Kurth sent his first report to the Galactic Council. It was short but unusual. Instead of numbers and predictions, it included a single observation. Humans accept imperfection as part of survival. The report was flagged for review. Evan had no idea that this small sentence would start something much bigger than either of them could imagine. The next few days changed the quiet apartment into something that felt like a small science station. Evan tried to keep his normal routine, but it was hard when an alien scientist lived just a few steps away and studied everything humans did. Kurth woke up earlier than Evan every morning. When Evan came into the kitchen, Kurth was usually standing very still, watching the coffee machine or the toaster like it might suddenly speak. "This device heats liquid beans," Kurth said one morning. "Humans willingly consume bitterness." Evan yawned. "It helps us wake up." "Your species accepts discomfort for future benefit," Kurth replied. "This pattern repeats." Kurth spent most of his time reading human data, but he also liked direct observation. He watched how Evan ate, how he checked his phone, how he complained about homework, and how he laughed at things that were not logical. One afternoon, Kurth asked a question that made Evan stop walking. "Why do humans continue to reproduce naturally when it creates uncertainty?" Kurth asked. Evan frowned. "We don't think of it like that." "Clarify," Kurth said. Evan thought for a moment. "It's not just about survival, it's about family, connection, and hope." Kurth recorded the words. "Hope is not measurable." "Yeah," Evan said. "That doesn't stop it from being real." Later that day, Kurth requested permission to visit a nearby community garden. Evan agreed, thinking it might keep Kurth from turning the kitchen into a lab again. They walked together under the afternoon sun, and Kurth stopped many times to observe plants growing naturally in the soil. "These plants grow without precise control," Kurth said, "yet they succeed." "Sometimes they don't," Evan replied, "but farmers keep trying." Kurth knelt near a row of tomatoes and touched the dirt. "Failure does not end the process." "No," Evan said. "It teaches it." That night, Kurth returned to the apartment with permission from the Exchange Authority to begin a controlled experiment. Evan was nervous but curious. Kurth chose something simple, fast-growing vegetables used for human food. "I will not modify the genetic structure," Kurth said. "Only observe and lightly assist growth." Evan crossed his arms. "No explosions, no glowing goo, no alerts." "Agreed," Kurth said. The experiment began quietly. Small planters were placed near the window. Kurth adjusted light levels, water amounts, and temperature, but not too much. He wanted to see what happened when human methods were respected. For the first 2 days, nothing special happened. Evan almost felt disappointed. Then on the third day, the plants started growing faster than expected. "They're bigger," Evan said, staring. "Yes," Kurth replied. "Your methods are inefficient but stable. When combined with minimal assistance, growth increases." Evan smiled. "Told you we weren't useless." Kurth did not answer. He was too focused on the data scrolling across his device. On the fourth day, the growth sped up even more. Leaves pressed against the glass. Roots pushed hard against the containers. Evan's smile faded. "Okay, maybe it's a little too fast." Kurth adjusted settings, reducing assistance. But the plants did not slow down. By the fifth day, one planter cracked. Soil spilled onto the floor. A vine stretched across the table and knocked over a chair. Evan stared. "You said minimal assistance." "This response is unexpected," Kurth said. "Human biology reacts strongly to opportunity." A warning beep echoed through the room. "That doesn't sound good," Evan said. Before Kurth could respond, the apartment building's environmental sensors triggered an alert. The lights dimmed and a calm, automated voice filled the room. "Unusual biological activity detected. Quarantine protocol initiated." The doors sealed shut. Evan panicked. "Great. Just great." "This was not intended," Kurth said. Evan laughed despite himself. "Welcome to Earth." Government drones arrived within minutes, scanning the apartment from outside. Officials spoke through a communication panel, asking questions quickly and nervously. Kurth explained everything in clear, calm language. Evan added his own explanation, though it was mostly emotional and confused. After several tense hours, the quarantine was lifted. The plants were safely removed, and the apartment was cleaned. The officials left with warnings and instructions. When it was finally quiet again, Evan collapsed onto the couch. "That was almost a disaster," Evan said. "Yes," Kurth replied. "Yet no harm occurred, only learning." Evan looked at him. "You really don't panic, do you?" "Panic reduces clarity," Kurth said. "Humans panic often, yet they continue." Evan smiled tiredly. "We're stubborn." That night, Kurth updated his report. He included charts, growth curves, and error notes. But he also added something new. "Human systems succeed not through control," he recorded, "but through tolerance of instability." The Galactic Council noticed the change in tone. Messages began to arrive asking Kurth to clarify his findings. Why had the experiment failed yet still provided valuable insight? Why did humans accept risk when safer options existed? Kurth answered honestly. They accept risk because growth without risk is not growth. Back on Earth, Evan noticed Kurth acting differently. He asked fewer cold questions and more thoughtful ones. He watched people on the street with curiosity instead of judgment. One evening, Evan showed Kurth old family photos. "This is my grandfather," Evan said. "He was a farmer." "He worked without advanced tools," Kurth observed. "Yeah," Evan said. "He made mistakes. Lost crops sometimes, but he kept going." Kurth stared at the image for a long time. "Your species survives through patience," he said finally. "Sometimes," Evan replied. "Other times we mess everything up." "Yet you try again," Kurth said. "That is rare." That night, the Galactic Council marked Kurth's research file with a new internal note. "Human biological systems show dangerous adaptability." Evan had no idea that simple plants in a small apartment had just changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. And Kurth was beginning to understand something his teachers never explained. Humans were not weak because they lacked control. They were strong because they lived without it. The apartment felt different after the incident with the plants. It was quieter but not calmer. Evan noticed that Kurth spent more time staring out the window now, watching people walk by, watching cars stop and start, watching life move in slow, unplanned ways. Kurth's communication device blinked often. Messages from the Galactic Council arrived daily. The questions were no longer simple. They wanted explanations. They wanted predictions. They wanted to know if humans were a risk. Evan sat at the kitchen table one evening doing homework when Kurth spoke without looking away from the window. "The council is concerned," Kurth said. "About the plants?" Evan asked. "About everything," Kurth replied. Evan put his pencil down. "That doesn't sound good." "They believed humans survived by chance," Kurth continued. "Now they suspect intention." Evan laughed softly. "Trust me, we don't plan that well." Kurth turned to face him. "That may be the problem." The next day, Kurth received a direct order. He was to expand his research beyond plants and food systems. The council wanted a deeper look into human survival behavior. Not in laboratories, in daily life. Kurth needed to observe humans under stress. Evan did not like the sound of that. "You mean like disasters?" Evan asked. "Not disasters," Kurth said. "Challenges." So they went outside. They visited busy streets where people argued but still helped strangers. They watched construction workers labor under the sun, tired but joking. They stood near a bus stop where a delayed bus caused complaints, laughter, and shared frustration. "These humans are inefficient," Kurth said quietly, "yet they coordinate." "That's called teamwork," Evan replied. "It lacks central control," Kurth said. "Welcome to Earth," Evan said again. Later that week, they visited a local school where volunteers helped students after hours. Kurth watched as a tired teacher stayed late to explain lessons again and again. "Why does she continue?" Kurth asked. "There is no reward," Evan shrugged. "She cares." "Caring is costly," Kurth said. "Yeah," Evan replied. "We pay the cost." That night, Kurth sent another report. This one was longer. It included behavioral maps, emotional responses, and a phrase that made several council members pause. "Humans invest energy without guaranteed return." The council did not like that. On the seventh day, a council observer drone arrived on Earth. It hovered silently above the city, invisible to most humans, watching everything through Kurth's data stream. Kurth felt pressure for the first time. The observer demanded a live demonstration. "They want proof," Kurth told Evan. "Of what?" Evan asked. "Of how humans respond when systems fail." Evan frowned. "That sounds dangerous." "Not intentionally," Kurth said. "They want observation, not harm." Still, Evan felt uneasy. The demonstration came sooner than expected. One afternoon, the city experienced a sudden power failure. Traffic lights went dark, stores closed, communication slowed. It was not caused by aliens. It was a simple equipment failure, but the observer watched closely. Evan and Kurth stood at an intersection where cars had stopped in confusion. For a moment, everything froze. Then something strange happened. Drivers stepped out of their cars. People talked. Someone began directing traffic by hand. Others followed. No one waited for orders. "They are self-organizing," Kurth whispered. A shop owner nearby handed out bottled water for free. A mechanic helped restart a stalled bus. Strangers shared phone chargers. The observer recorded everything. "Why do they help?" the observer asked through Kurth's device. Kurth did not answer immediately. Evan did. "Because one day they'll need help too." The observer paused. When the power returned, life continued as if nothing had happened. No panic, no collapse. That night the council sent a warning. "Your findings suggest humans are adaptive beyond acceptable parameters." Evan read the translated message and felt a chill. "Is that bad?" "Yes," Kurth said honestly. "To the council, adaptability without oversight is dangerous." Evan crossed his arms. "So what now?" "They are considering reclassification," Kurth said. The word hung heavy in the air. Reclassification meant attention. Attention meant control, or worse. Kurth felt something unfamiliar growing inside him. It was not fear exactly. It was concern, not for the mission, for Evan, for Earth. That night, Kurth reviewed his earlier reports. He noticed how his language had changed. Less cold, less distant, more human. He opened a new private log. "Humans are not optimized," he recorded. "They are unfinished by design. This allows endless adjustment." He hesitated, then added another line. This makes them unstoppable. The observer flagged the sentence. The council requested immediate clarification. Kurth delayed the response. The next morning, Evan noticed Kurth had not slept. You okay? Evan asked. I am conflicted, Kurth said. That makes two of us, Evan replied. They may decide to intervene, Kurth said. To protect the galaxy from potential human expansion. Evan's jaw tightened. We're not trying to take over anything. I know, Kurth said softly. But they don't, Evan said. Outside, the city moved as always. People rushed to work. Kids laughed. Life continued without knowing it was being judged. Kurth realized something then. Humans did not wait for permission to live. They lived first. Permission came later, if at all. That afternoon, Kurth sent his most dangerous report yet. Humans do not collapse when systems fail, he wrote. They replace systems with cooperation. The council reacted immediately. Emergency discussions began. Risk models changed. Humanity's profile shifted from developing species to something new, emergent variable power. Evan noticed military aircraft flying overhead that evening. Human ones, normal patrols, but the sky felt watched. Kurth stood beside Evan on the balcony. I may be ordered to leave, Kurth said. Evan swallowed. Will you? I do not know, Kurth replied. For the first time, the alien scientist was uncertain. And for the first time, Evan realized that humanity's greatest strength was also its greatest threat. They did not know how to stop. They only knew how to continue. Somewhere far beyond Earth, the Galactic Council prepared for a future they had never planned for. A future where humans did not need permission to survive. And Kurth stood in the middle of it all, no longer just an observer, but a witness. The order arrived just before sunrise. Kurth stood still in the center of the apartment as his device translated the message again and again. The words did not change, no matter how many times he read them. Observation phase ending. Subject risk increasing. Prepare for extraction or containment recommendation. Evan was still half asleep when Kurth spoke. They are moving faster now, Kurth said. Evan sat up in bed. Who is they? The council, Kurth replied. They no longer see humans as harmless. Evan rubbed his eyes. We never were. Kurth looked at him. They believe humans do not know their own strength. Evan stood and walked to the window. The city looked normal. People walked dogs. Cars moved. A delivery drone passed quietly. No one out there feels powerful, Evan said. They're just trying to get through the day. That is what makes it dangerous, Kurth said. Later that morning, Kurth was ordered to attend a live council session. A large holographic display filled the living room. Tall alien figures appeared, their forms sharp and distant. Researcher Kurth, one voice said. Your findings suggest instability. Kurth stood straight. My findings suggest resilience. Resilience without limits leads to expansion, another voice replied. Expansion leads to conflict. Evan stood near the wall, silent, watching beings from across the galaxy decide humanity's value. You were sent to observe biology, the council said, not culture. They cannot be separated, Kurth replied. The council paused. Explain. Human survival is not based on design, Kurth said. It is based on response. They respond faster than systems can fail. Response without guidance becomes chaos, the council said. Chaos can build, Kurth answered. Humans build from it. The council ended the session abruptly. They are afraid, Evan said quietly. Yes, Kurth replied. Fear leads them to control. That afternoon, something unusual happened. Kurth's observer drone went offline for 3 seconds. Only 3, but that was enough. During those 3 seconds, Kurth sent a private message using an old human satellite network. The message was short and simple. Do not interfere. Humans adapt. Forced control will fail. The message was intercepted. Alarms echoed across council space. Back on Earth, Evan felt the tension without knowing why. Military aircraft increased patrols. Emergency systems ran checks. No one said the word alien, but everyone felt watched. That evening, Evan and Kurth walked through the city again. The streets were busy. People complained about prices, joked about weather, argued about sports. They do not know, Evan said. No, Kurth replied. They live anyway. They passed a small accident at an intersection. Two cars had lightly collided. No injuries. Drivers were upset but calm. Strangers helped move vehicles aside. Kurth recorded silently. This would cause panic on my homeworld, Kurth said. Evan shrugged. Stuff happens. That phrase appears often, Kurth said. Stuff happens. It's how we stay sane, Evan replied. That night the council sent a final directive. Prepare Earth profile for intervention readiness. Evan read the translation and felt cold. Intervention. Yes, Kurth said. They may restrict technology access, monitor population growth, limit expansion. Control us, Evan said. Yes. Evan clenched his fists. That won't go well, Kurth nodded. I have concluded the same. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Kurth made a choice without orders. He delayed his next report. Instead, he began collecting examples of human response to pressure. Floods where neighbors built shelters together. Power failures turned into shared meals. Shortages that created cooperation. He sent data without interpretation, just facts. The council reacted with confusion. These responses should not function, one analyst said. But they do, another replied. Meanwhile, Evan noticed something else. Humans were changing too. People spoke more about community. Schools ran drills. Volunteers increased. Feels like people sense something, Evan said. Humans are sensitive to change, Kurth replied, even without knowing the cause. One night, Kurth finally told Evan the truth. If the council intervenes, Kurth said, humans will resist. Not with weapons, Evan said. With work. Yes, Kurth agreed. That is worse. The council scheduled a final vote. Classification options appeared on Kurth's screen. Contain, control, observe at distance. Kurth knew what each meant. Containment would fail. Control would provoke adaptation. Observation was the only safe path. But fear does not choose safety. As the vote approached, Kurth sent one last report. It contained no science, no numbers, only words. Humans do not need permission to grow. They will grow through any limit placed upon them. Intervention will not stop expansion. It will accelerate it. The council vote paused. Arguments filled the chamber. Some called humans reckless. Others called them inevitable. On Earth, Evan sat on the roof of the apartment building, watching stars he had never noticed before. You think they'll leave us alone? Evan asked. I hope so, Kurth said. And if they do, Kurth looked at the city lights below. Then they will learn, he said, the same way humans learn. How is that? Evan asked. Kurth's voice was quiet. By failing first. The council decision had not yet been announced, but across the galaxy, one truth had already spread. Humans were no longer an unknown. They were a force that could not be paused. And Kurth, once sent to study simple biology, now stood as the first alien to truly understand humanity's greatest strength. Not power, not intelligence, but the refusal to stop living. The day of the council's decision arrived quietly. There were no alarms, no ships in the sky, no signs that anything important was happening. Earth continued as it always did. People woke up late, rushed to work, argued online, laughed at jokes, and made plans for the future. Evan went to school that morning like normal. He took a test he had not studied enough for. He borrowed a pen from a friend. He complained about homework. Life went on, but Kurth stayed in the apartment. He stood in front of the holographic display, watching the Galactic Council chamber fill with figures from dozens of worlds. Some were calm, others were tense. Data flowed around them like light. The vote was about to begin. Final classification of human civilization, the central voice announced. Kurth felt something heavy settle inside him. He realized this feeling had a name in human language: responsibility. The council began to speak. Humans demonstrate uncontrolled adaptability. They grow without guidance. They resist prediction. They turn failure into strength. Each statement was true, and each made the council more uneasy. Kurth was given one final chance to speak. He stepped forward. Humans are not a threat by intent, Kurth said. They do not seek dominance, they seek continuation. Continuation leads to expansion, the council replied. Yes, Kurth said, and expansion leads to contact. Contact leads to learning. Or conflict, another voice said. Only if fear leads first, Kurth replied. The chamber fell silent. The council began to vote. Back on Earth, Evan finished school and walked home. The city felt normal, but something was different. People talked more to strangers. A neighbor helped another carry groceries. Someone fixed a broken fence without being asked. Evan noticed it without fully understanding why. Humans were adjusting. At the same time, across the world, small problems appeared. A shipping delay, a power shortage in one region, a communication outage. Nothing serious. But the galaxy was watching. Instead of panic, people shared resources. Communities organized quickly. Local leaders stepped up without orders. Systems bent. They did not break. Kurth watched live feeds from Earth appear in the council chamber, humans adapting in real time. Why are they not collapsing? One council member asked. They are, Kurth said, into cooperation. The final votes were cast. 3 options remained. Containment failed simulations. Control showed long-term instability. Observation carried risk but the lowest probability of conflict. The result appeared. Observe at distance, the council announced. The chamber filled with quiet reactions, some relief, some fear. Kurth released a breath he did not know he was holding. Earth would be left alone for now. The council added a final note to the human file. Watch, do not interfere. When Evan returned home, Kurth was standing by the window again. So, Evan asked. The council has decided, Kurth said. Evan waited. They will not intervene, Kurth continued. They will watch. Evan smiled. Figures, Kurth turned. You are not afraid of being watched, Evan said. We already are by cameras, satellites, each other. This is different, Kurth said. Yeah, Evan replied. But it's still life. That evening, news reports mentioned nothing about aliens. They talked about supply fixes, community projects, people helping people. No one knew they had just passed a test. Over the next few days, the observer drone pulled back. Alien monitoring systems reduced activity. Council attention shifted elsewhere, but Kurth stayed. He was no longer required to, yet he remained. You could go home, Evan said one night. I could, Kurth replied, but I am still learning. What? Evan asked. How humans live without knowing they are important, Kurth said. Evan laughed. Trust me, we don't feel important. That is also why you are, Kurth replied. Kurth sent his final official report. It was short. Humanity is not complete. It is ongoing. Any attempt to stop it will fail. The council archived the file. On Earth, life moved forward. Crops grew. Some failed. New ideas spread. Old ones faded. Humans argued, built, broke, and rebuilt. No perfect system appeared, and none was needed. One evening, Evan and Kurth sat on the roof again, watching stars. What will the galaxy do now? Evan asked. They will prepare, Kurth said. For what? For when humans arrive, Kurth answered. Evan raised an eyebrow. Arrive where? Everywhere, Kurth said. Evan leaned back and smiled. Sounds like us. Far away, deep in council space, a quiet agreement spread. Humans were not to be rushed, not to be controlled, not to be underestimated. They were to be watched. Because when humans finally reached the stars on their own terms, they would not ask for permission. They would simply adapt and continue. Time moved forward as it always did on Earth. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The world did not change suddenly, but it changed steadily. People adjusted to small problems, solved new ones, and argued about things that did not matter while quietly fixing the things that did. Evan grew older. His classes became harder. His worries became bigger. But life continued. Kurth stayed. The exchange program officially ended, but no order came to remove him. The council kept its distance. Observation continued, but quietly now, like someone watching from the shadows instead of standing in the doorway. Kurth began to live more like a human. He learned routines. He learned patience. He learned that answers did not always arrive quickly, and sometimes they did not arrive at all. One afternoon, Evan found Kurth sitting on the floor, surrounded by books. "Since when do you read paper books?" Evan asked. "They are inefficient," Kurth replied. "I like them." Evan smiled. "That's how it starts." Kurth had changed. He still recorded data, still sent reports, but they were different now. Less cold, less distant. They spoke of behavior, of choice, of something that could not be measured easily. The council noticed. "Researcher Kurth," one message read, "you appear compromised." Kurth read it carefully. "I appear informed," he replied. The council did not answer. On Earth, humanity continued forward without knowing it was still being watched. New energy projects began. Old systems were repaired instead of replaced. Small inventions solved everyday problems. Nothing dramatic, nothing perfect, but everything moved. One night, a meteor storm lit up the sky. Evan and Kurth stood outside with others, watching streaks of light burn through the atmosphere. "Humans always look up," Kurth said. Evan nodded. "Even when we don't know what's out there." "That is unusual," Kurth said. "Most species look inward once survival is secured." Evan thought for a moment. "Maybe we never feel secure." "That would explain much," Kurth replied. Weeks later, Kurth received another message. This one was different. It was not a command. It was a question. "If humans reach interstellar travel, how should the galaxy respond?" Kurth did not answer immediately. He walked through the city. He watched people rush to work, stop to help strangers, complain, laugh, and dream. He watched children imagine futures no one had promised them. That night he sent his reply. "Respond with patience. Humans do not arrive as conquerors, they arrive as learners." The message was archived. Time passed again. Years this time. Evan finished school. He chose engineering, inspired by small systems and big ideas. Kurth helped him study, though sometimes his explanations were too advanced. "You think too big," Evan would say. "And you think too small," Kurth would reply. They balanced each other. Humanity made its first quiet step beyond its system. No grand announcement. No dramatic flags, just careful exploration shared across nations that did not always agree but understood the value of moving forward together. The galaxy noticed. The council noticed. Fear returned. Debates began again. Humans are expanding. They are adapting to space. They are doing it together. That last part worried them most. Kurth was called one final time. "You have observed them longest," the council said. "What are they becoming?" Kurth did not hesitate. "They are becoming what they have always been," he said. "Persistent." "Persistent leads to dominance," the council replied. "No," Kurth said. "Persistent leads to presence." Silence followed. Kurth returned to Earth. Evan was waiting. "They called you again?" Evan asked. "Yes," Kurth replied. "And they are still afraid," Kurth said. Evan nodded. "Fear takes time." That night, Kurth made his final choice. He deactivated his observer systems, not as a rebellion, as a conclusion. He sent one last message to the council. "I am no longer studying humanity. I am witnessing it." The council did not respond. On Earth, humanity reached outward slowly. Ships moved beyond familiar paths. Signals reached farther than ever before. And one day, humanity was no longer alone. The first open contact did not come with weapons or demands. It came with curiosity. Humans did not kneel. They did not threaten. They asked questions. The galaxy did not know how to respond. Kurth stood among humans as a bridge, not as a guide, but as proof. Proof that understanding came before fear. Evan stood beside him, older now, stronger, still human. "You ready?" Evan asked. Kurth looked at the stars. "Yes," he said, "they are." Somewhere deep in Council space, an old file was reopened. Watch before delete. The label remained, but the meaning changed. Humans were no longer something to be erased or controlled. They were something to be understood, because humanity did not rush the galaxy. They did not ask for permission. They did not wait for approval. They arrived by continuing, by adapting, by refusing to stop. And the galaxy finally realized the truth Kurth had seen from the beginning. Humans were not dangerous because they were strong. They were dangerous because they never gave up, and they never would.